What is a depth and complexity frame? Well, it is a frame because it looks like a frame, and what we have here is a blank one. It is a pretty powerful yet simple tool for incorporating depth and complexity into your students' learning routines. The first thing that we do with the blank frame is we select the topic that we are going to have students engage with, or you could also have the kids select the topic. It should be content specific and it is very flexible. I've just chosen conflict because it tends to show up in a lot of different courses: English, social studies, science sometimes, even in, of course, some social and emotional learning. So once we have selected our topic, the next thing that we do is select our icons, right? In this case, I have chosen origins and ethics. And we are using these icons as a lens for thinking or viewing the idea of conflict. So once we have selected our icons, we then use those to examine our content. So in this case, I'm using origins as the lens to think about conflict, and I've asked the question, what factors tend to cause conflict? Which are the most important? Okay, so again, the process is pretty simple. We pick our topic, or students pick our topic, and then we decide what icons we want to use as prompts for our student thinking. These first two I chose, origins and ethics. What I then do is use them as lenses. Then I use that lens to write a higher level question, right? So in these first two quadrants, I've got my icons and I've got the sample question down there. For ethics, I have what moral obligations, if any, do we have to intervene in conflict, why, and what might be the unintended consequences. And then over here in the other quadrants, I've basically just got the regular old prompts. So you're just putting your icon, question, and prompt there. So here's a more filled out one. The next two icons I've selected are trends, asking the question, what trends can you identify in the conflicts at recess? So again, there's a little bit of social and emotional learning there, and what accounts for these changes. Then I've also got paradox. Are there instances where it is impossible to pick a side in a conflict? Are there instances where trying to abate conflict only makes it worse? So what I would do is, once I've got my topic, I've got my icons, and I've got my questions, I would hand it off to the student. You could do it printed out. You could have them just do a foldable and draw the icons and write the questions. We're going to do ours digitally, and I'm going to go step by step through how to make a digital frame in just a few minutes here. So what we have is essentially another blank frame. You see that I've got my emojicons up across the top here. You can also use the J. Taylor icons if you would prefer, but I use the emojicons because they're a little bit more flexible. We're in Google Suites here. We're going to exit out full screen so that we can manipulate these things. And what I'll do if I'm the teacher trying to create one of these is I will just open up a text box. I will select the icon that I want my kids to be engaging with, and I will just copy and paste it into that text box. And then I'm going to write my questions, or my kids are going to be writing the answers to the questions. These are very flexible, by the way. There are lots of things, as you can see there in the center, that you can use as a topic for your kids to engage with. It could be an equation, it could be a star question, it could be a quote from a fiction piece or a nonfiction piece. It could even be a picture or a graph or a passage or a prompt, right? So in this instance, this might be an individual one where each kid gets this same copy, and you as the teacher are having them answer each of these prompts. And it may be that you write a specific question, or you may just say something like, hey, tell me everything that you know about the ethics of this particular historical quote, right? Or tell me all the unanswered questions that you have about this graph. So this could be an individual one, or it may be that you have four students working on the same frame. And so Johnny is answering a question about ethics, Susie is answering a question about multiple perspectives, etc. You can also set it up like this, where maybe you have four students working on the same frame, and they're all talking about the multiple perspectives in, say, a story or a word problem or something like that. And so they're all doing the same kind of thinking, but maybe they're coming up with different answers. And then what they might do at the very end is they'll look at what each of them wrote, and then they'll try to come up with a collective big idea here. So this is an example of a frame. The topic in this instance is actually a short Aesop's fable called The Animal and the Plague. This is actually a teacher-created one from a live training not too long ago, and that teacher chose contribution, patterns, ethics, and trends as the lenses that she wanted her kids to be using when they read this Aesop's fable of the animals and the plague, and these are the questions that she came up with. So for contribution, how does contributing to the group help save or destroy the animals' lives? Was it even necessary for them to contribute? For patterns, how does this sacrifice impact how the animals handle future challenges? That's a really good question. For ethics, does one animal's life outweigh the other animals' lives? And then for trends, how will the donkey's sacrifice change the perception of the way we see donkeys? If the donkey didn't confess, would we have a different perception of the donkey? So again, this is very usable, very flexible, and it's very simple to create. So how do you make one? Well, I'm going to show you step by step. Some passing familiarity with Google Suites and Google Slides especially is going to be necessary in order for you to successfully do this. So first things first, we're going to make sure that we are out of full screen. And then we're going to come here to our blank slide. Okay, if you want to use the glossy J. Taylor icons, you can do that by clicking on that link or typing in that link. And you can get depth and complexity icons, the content imperative icons, and the math icons. But again, we're just going to be using the emojis. So the first thing that we do to make our frame, we want to make the centerpiece first. So I'm just going to go up there to shapes and I'm going to select rectangles. I like to have my fill blank, so I'm just going to make that transparent, and I do like a little bit more leading on my lines, so I'm going to bump that up to 2 pixels. All right, so to make this easier, now what I'm going to do is just kind of Command C, Command V, so I'm copying that same rectangle, and I'm going to make this a nice big one. And once I've got my stuff nice and centered, I'm just going to come up here to line, and I'm going to go ahead and just connect those real quick. And there I have my brand new blank frame. Well, now I need to go ahead and drop in my icons. I just have a blank document with all of these loaded onto them, but I'm just going to pop up to this next slide here and just copy and paste. And then I'm coming back to my blank frame and I'm just dropping those in here. And I'm going to downsize these a little bit just to make it look a little bit prettier. And then they're up there for you to copy and paste or students to copy and paste, etc. And it's really just as easy as that. Now, one of the things that you can do to make your life easier instead of making a blank frame every time on a Google slide with the shapes and the lines, you can just go ahead and screen cap and then copy and paste that screen cap onto any number of slides. So I've got my blank frame here on a Mac. I'm going to hit Command-Shift-4. That's going to give me those little crosshairs. I'm going to drag across here, and there is my screen cap, and then I can just keep that in a file on my desktop and just copy and paste it onto as many blank slides as I need for my kids. One of the other handy things that you can do in Google with frames is force a copy to assign to kids. So let's say that you've curated a frame with questions and icons on it, and you want every kid to get the same frame, right? So every kid's getting the same questions. You're not necessarily differentiating at this point. You just kind of want to see what their thinking is on these particular questions. Well, again, being out of full screen, and then up here in the search bar where it says Edit, what you're going to do is delete edit and put in copy. Make sure that copy is lowercase. And then you can just copy and paste this link and send it out to kids. And when they click on it, it will ask them to make a copy of the same frame. And it really is that easy.